Okay, so something happened that nobody is talking about yet. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Stick with me until the end of this video, because the last scene we're going to break down is the one that changes everything about how their story actually ends. If you've been watching the way these two characters look at each other on screen, you've probably felt it too. There's a moment, just a beat, a half second, where the camera lingers a little too long, and fans have been clipping that moment, slowing it down, frame by frame, trying to figure out what it actually means for Season 2. Here's the thing. When the show first introduced these two characters together, everyone assumed it was going to go one direction. The age gap, the way they were positioned in the group, the dynamic, it all screamed one specific trope. But if you go back and actually watch the early episodes again with fresh eyes, something else is going on underneath it. It's not romance. At least, not in the way most people think. What's actually being built here is something rarer on screen. A mentorship. A bond built on respect. And honestly, that's a much more interesting story than the obvious one. Because mentorship arcs, the ones that are done right, they hit differently. They build trust instead of tension. And trust is what makes an audience actually care. So let's talk about what the actual evidence points to for Season 2. First, body language. In every scene these two share, there's a specific physical pattern. One character is always slightly protective, positioned just a step ahead or to the side, like they're shielding the other without even thinking about it. That's not something actors do randomly. That's blocking. That's intentional. Directors don't leave that kind of thing to chance, especially not in a show that's this carefully shot. Second, the dialogue. If you listen closely to the way these two characters talk to each other, compared to literally every other pairing in the show, there's a difference. With everyone else, there's banter, there's tension, there's that push and pull thing shows do to keep you guessing. But between these two, it's calmer. It's more honest. There's no game being played. And when a show removes the game between two characters, that usually means the writers are setting up something that isn't about romantic tension at all. It's about growth. And hey, if you're new here, this channel breaks down exactly this kind of thing, the stuff hiding in plain sight that most people scroll right past. So if that's your thing, hit subscribe, because we're about to get into the part that nobody's talking about yet. Now here's where it gets really interesting. There's a scene, and if you've watched it, you know exactly which one I mean, where one of them says something that, on the surface, sounds like a throwaway line, just a small comment. But go back and watch the other character's face when it's said. She couldn't hide it. There's a flicker, just a flicker of something that looks a lot less like friendship, and a lot more like recognition, like she's seeing herself in this person. Like this isn't just a mentor and a student, it's two people who understand each other on a level nobody else in the show does. And before you think this is just us reading into things, this isn't a new theory. Comment sections have been talking about this for weeks. People are pulling up old interviews, old behind-the-scenes clips, even photos from set, trying to piece together what the actual relationship between these characters is going to look like once Season 2 drops. And here's the part that really gets people. In one of the BTS clips that's been circulating, you can see the two of them between takes, not in character, just as themselves. And the comfort level is just different. It's the kind of comfort that takes time to build, the kind that can't really be faked for a camera. Which tells you something about how these scenes were actually filmed, and probably how the writers were thinking about this dynamic behind the scenes too. But here's something most people haven't picked up on yet, and it's honestly one of the bigger pieces of this puzzle. Go back to the scene where the two of them are separated from the rest of the group for just a few minutes. You know the one. On the surface, it looks like filler, a quiet moment between bigger scenes. But watch the framing. The camera doesn't cut away the way it normally does. It holds. It lets the silence sit there. And in TV, silence that's allowed to breathe like that is almost never accidental. Editors cut for pacing constantly, except when the moment itself is the point. When a show lets a scene slow down like that, it's usually because the writers want you to actually sit with what's happening between these two characters, not just move past it on the way to the next plot beat. There's also a detail in the wardrobe that fans have started picking apart, frame by frame. If you look closely at the accessories these two characters wear throughout the season, there's a subtle visual echo. Small, easy to miss, but once you see it, it's everywhere. Costume designers don't add details like that for no reason. It's the kind of thing that's meant to plant a seed early so that when the payoff comes later, your brain registers it as familiar even if you can't consciously place why. That's classic visual storytelling, and it's usually reserved for relationships the writers consider important to the bigger picture. So if Season 2 leans into the mentorship angle, and everything points to it, what does that actually look like on screen? It probably means we get more scenes where one of them is guiding the other through something difficult. Not in a romantic "I'll protect you" way, but in a "I've been where you are, and here's what I wish someone had told me" way. That's a completely different kind of emotional payoff. And honestly, it's the kind of arc that tends to get overlooked by casual viewers. But the people who notice it, they become the most loyal part of the fan base, because it feels real. Now here's something else nobody's connected yet. Remember that one line from earlier in the show? The one that felt random at the time? Watch it again with this mentorship idea in your head. It completely reframes the entire scene. What sounded like just a joke becomes foreshadowing. And that's something really good writing does. It plants something small early on, lets you forget about it, and then pays it off later in a way that makes you want to re-watch everything from the start. That's the kind of thing that's easy to miss the first time through. But once you see it, every scene these two share looks completely different. There's one more thing worth bringing up, and it's something a lot of longtime fans have started pointing out in the comments. Compare how these two characters were written in the very first episodes to how they're written now. Early on, their interactions were almost entirely functional, quick lines, mostly there to move the plot along. But somewhere around the midpoint, the writing shifts. The conversations get longer. They start asking each other questions that have nothing to do with the main plot at all. The kind of questions people only ask when they actually care about the answer. That shift is almost always intentional. Writers don't expand a relationship's screen time for no reason, especially not in a show juggling this many characters and storylines. When a pairing starts getting more room to breathe like that, it usually means the people writing the show see something in it worth building on. And if you put all of this together, the protective blocking, the calmer dialogue, the held shots, the wardrobe echo, the shift in how their conversations are written, it stops looking like a coincidence and starts looking like a pattern. A pattern that's been building quietly, episode by episode, while everyone's attention was on the louder, more dramatic pairings. So, Season 2, if the mentorship arc is real, and the body language, the dialogue, the BTS chemistry, all of it points that way, we're probably looking at one of the most quietly powerful relationships in the entire show. Not the loudest, not the one with the most drama, but the one that by the end, people are going to look back on and go, "Oh, that's what that was building to the whole time." And honestly, nobody talks about this enough. Most people are so focused on who's getting together with who that they miss the relationships that are actually doing the emotional heavy lifting in the background. So here's what I want to know from you. Watch that scene again, the one where she couldn't hide it. Real reaction or just good acting? Drop your answer in the comments, because I've seen people argue both sides, and honestly, I'm not sure myself. And if you're into this kind of breakdown, we've also got a whole series digging into another pairing from a completely different show. Way more drama, way more chaos. So go check that out next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.